Labas.
Labas rytas, kolegos.
Good morning, colleagues. Today morning, we have come here to speak about human rights violations by China in the territory of former democratic Hong Kong, and to commemorate the 33rd anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. We also have here with us a representative of the opposition from Georgia and Belarus. I am a co-chair of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China and represent the Social Democratic Party and also the Committee on National Security and Defense in the Parliament. Here with me, I have Mr. Pavilionis, Pavilionis, who's also a member of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. He's a deputy chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and a representative of the Homeland Union Lithuanian Christian Democrats. And a former ambassador to the United States of America, and Mr. Marius Matijošaitis, Deputy Chair of the Committee on European Affairs and member of the Group for Interparliamentary Relations with the People's Republic of China. We also have here a representative of People Watch and a Freedom for Hong Kong movement representative. Why we are here also in the context of the alliance on China. This is an important multi-party organization that encompasses more than 220 members of parliaments from 5 continents. This group works on the issues of China and sees that the reality that previously was the basis for our relations with China does not longer exist. 33 years ago, the People's Liberation Army of the People's Republic of China opened fire on peaceful pro-democracy demonstrators. The death toll rise from several hundred to several thousand, with thousands more wounded. China violated the Sino-British Joint Declaration and broke the democracy in Hong Kong. The commemoration of the Tiananmen massacre was banned in Hong Kong too. 12 people were sentenced from 4 to 14 months due to their participation in the June the 4th vigil. It is not only Lithuania that wants to bring the attention to the Tiananmen massacre and to the situation in Hong Kong. Our alliance invites many countries to take necessary measures to hold responsible people liable and to implement the sanctions for human rights violations in Hong Kong. We also made a video where 12 members of parliament, including a member of the European Parliament, Mr. Butikov, Mr. Sarayano Duncan Smith, Mr. Pavel Fischer from the Czech Republic, and Mr. Pavilionis, we expressed the position that the Chinese Communist Party should be held responsible and liable for the violation of international law, to commemorate and pay tribute to those that fell victims to the massacre in the Tiananmen Square, and that these people cannot use the privileges that the international community offers to them because they are international criminals. During this press conference, we want to present the resolution initiated by Mr. Marius Matijošaitis. Marius will introduce the guests of today's press conference. Thank you. I hope that our guests hear the translation. Could you please nod your head if you do hear the translation? We have Wong here, a Hong Kong activist who lives in Germany in exile now. Has been very active since 2015, a pro-democracy activist in the German NGO Freedom for Hong Kong. He is initiator of this NGO. I would like to give the floor to him and say why human rights violations in Hong Kong and the violations of international law in Hong Kong should be focused on, why Lithuanians focus on human rights violation in Hong Kong, though we are geographically very remote countries. But we really feel this empathy and sympathy with Hong Kong. Could you please say a few sentences? Could you please introduce yourself and mention the main issues? And please, you are given up to 5 minutes.
So, good morning, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank all the MPs for inviting me to this very meaningful press conference in commemoration of the victims in the June 4th massacre, and also for all the human rights fighters from all over the world. So first of all, as Mr. Marius said, I'm a Hong Kong activist. Now I'm in exile in Germany. I am the first political refugees granted asylum in an European country. Now I am a student. At the same time, I continued my activism in Germany. So everyone to know that the situation now in Hong Kong is deteriorating in a very rapid pace. So, for example, the June 4th vigils that Hong Kong people go every year since 1990 is no longer allowed to be held in Victoria Park. This year marks the first year that such June 4th vigils will be seen as illegal due to the so-called national security concern. And the organizer of the June 4th vigils every year was forced to disband due to the arrest under the national security law. A very popular, very famous human rights lawyer, Zhao Hantong, now is in prison and awaiting for the trial. She could face up to a life imprisonment term. In terms of political prisons, since the outbreak of the movement in 2019, there are already over 700 political prisons there, in which around 550 given custodial sentences and around 169 people were charged under the draconian national security law. And not only activists, politicians, and dissidents are facing great risk under this law, but also journalists. Since the implementation of the national security law, over 18 journalists were arrested and 12 editors and executive officers in pro-democracy media outlets were also persecuted. And so I just gave a brief overview of the deterioration of the human rights situation in Hong Kong. And I think it is really important that every democracy would stand together to help Hong Kong to fight against the expansion of the authoritarian regimes, because we have seen 33 years ago the Chinese Communist Party could roll the tent into Tiananmen Square, fire to its own people, and committed such atrocity. And after 33 years, the Chinese Communist Party is still ruling, and they are spreading its oppressions to its neighboring country, to other parts of the world. And if we don't stop them now, there will be even more victims. And as a victim of the Chinese Communist Party, it is really encouraging for me to see that, for example, small country like Lithuania is so brave to stand up, to speak up for Hong Kong people, to stand in solidarity with all the human rights and democracy activists. And so I am fully supportive of the newly introduced resolutions, and I hope that in the future we have more opportunity to work together. And I believe as long as all the like-minded people, all the freedom-loving people stand together, at some point, Chinese Communist Party will be like another Soviet Union, people living under this country, living this authoritarian regime will finally be free and have a democratic prospect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Ray. Dėkoju, panas Wong, iš tikrųjų tai labai svarbios mums visiems.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Your ideas are very important for us because your experience with communists is very similar to our experience with communists. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Matijošaitis, a member of the Freedom Party, of the Liberal Party, to present the resolution. Thank you very much. I am also very happy that the representatives of the three political parties have united for the joint goal. We say that a small country can stand for human rights, for the rule of law on the global scale, despite its size. As a chair of the friendship group with Hong Kong, I would like to present this resolution. The first one was adopted in December on the violations of human rights in Hong Kong, and this one stresses the massacre of the 33rd anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, and represents the changes in Hong Kong, the illegitimate elections, and other things. Due to the time constraints, I will do my best to read the resolution. We are going to present it tomorrow in the Committee of Foreign Affairs. This is the statement of the 33rd anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. The Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania, noting that on June 4th, 1989, soldiers belonging to the People's Liberation Army of the People's Republic of China opened fire on peaceful pro-democracy demonstrators occupying Beijing's Tiananmen Square, with estimates of the dust toll varying from several hundred to several thousands, with thousands more wounded. Referring to the draft resolution on human rights in Hong Kong submitted to the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania in 2020, stressing that Hong Kong has long been an example of a vibrant and free society in East Asia, and that the international community is deeply interested in Hong Kong's stability and prosperity, and condemning all steps that undermine the legitimacy of the Hong Kong elections. Building on the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, which establishes the right to life, liberty, and security of person and freedom of expression, and stresses that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Taking into consideration the obligation of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region as a signatory to the International Convent on Civil and Political Rights of 1966 to uphold the right of peaceful assembly, the right to freedom of association with others, that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest or detention. Responding to the sentencing of 4 individuals on the 6th of May 2021, including activist Joshua Wong, to between 4 to 10 months imprisonment for a case of unauthorized assembly regarding the June 4th vigil 2020 in Hong Kong, and the sentencing of 8 other individuals on the 15th of September 2021, including Jim Lai and Hang Tang Cho, to between 4 to 14 months imprisonment to the participation in the June 4th vigil 2020 in Hong Kong, reacting to the forced disbanding of the Hong Kong Alliance. Noting that the appointment of John Lee as Hong Kong chief executive took place through a so-called election in which less than 0.2% of the Hong Kong population took part, with voting restricted to a strictly vetted election committee of 1,416 individuals, with Lee standing as the sole candidate, emphasizing that the passing of Hong Kong's so-called electoral reform laws on the 27th of May 2021, which allows for the vetting and barring of opposition candidates standing for election and drastically reducing the number of directly elected seats in the Hong Kong Legislative Council, is in direct conflict with the Chinese government's international obligations under the principles of the legally binding Sino-British Joint Declaration registered with the United Nations, and undermines the one country, two systems framework enshrined in the declarations. Calls on the government of the Republic of China to release all political prisoners in Hong Kong, including those sentenced for taking part in June 4th vigils, and to urgently restore freedom of expression, freedom of association, and the right to peaceful assembly in Hong Kong in compliance with the one country, two systems framework. Deplores the anti-democratic electoral reforms which facilitated the appointment of John Lee as Hong Kong's next chief executive, and refuses to recognize his election as a legitimate democratic process. Urges the European Union to urgently use the EU global human rights sanctions regime targeted to implement sanctions against Chinese and Hong Kong government officials who have perpetrated human rights abuses and are responsible for violations of international law in Hong Kong. Encourages the European Commission and the European Union member states to further scrutinize and limit exports of dual-use goods to Hong Kong, including those that may be used to further surveillance or repression in Hong Kong citizens. Invites the President and the government of the Republic of Lithuania to create a mechanism for facilitating access to political asylum for Hong Kong's political dissidents on the basis of the conclusions of the European Council in Hong Kong.
Now I'd like to give the floor to Žygimantas Pavilionis to give an overview of the situation in Hong Kong and to comment on that. I'm very happy about this unity, which is multi-party and geopolitical unity also, because we have representatives from Georgia, leader of the Belarusian opposition. This is an important lesson. Democracies need to stand together. I repeat the ideas of Mr. Karamurza, who is arrested. The thought that countries cannot change their foreign policy, support and assistance to aggression and the loss of democratic ideas means that loss of European values, the loss of European prospects. And this actually impedes Georgia's possibility and EU prospects. Officially, Belarus is not declared an ally to Russia during its war with Ukraine, but what we see in different analysis that we made in the IPAC, that China too is taking part in this aggression by taking the position and place of those international companies that leave Russia. MasterCard, Visa, American Express transactions are not working in Russia, but China is taking this empty place. Huawei is taking Apple's and Samsung's place, and the place that Ericsson, Nokia used to have. China is also making gas and oil deals with Russia. So economically, China supports Russia's aggression in Ukraine. And therefore, I'm surprised by the remarks of some of our colleagues in the parliament from other parties that we should not support deeper relations with Taiwan, our support for Hong Kong. I hope that we will deal with this madness in Lithuania and the West. Dovilė mentioned Reinhard Bütikofer, who said a few months ago that the West made a huge mistake to invest into the East with hopes that Russia might change. But the countries in the East have become stronger and are aggressive towards Ukraine, and such countries like China support Russia in this aggressive war. So we should stand together. If we support autocratic forces either in China or autocratic tendencies in Georgia, or have relations with the regime of Lukashenko, this is contrary to our national interests, because these countries unite against democracy, but democracies need to unite. And we, democracies, should focus on relations with democratic countries, because they are the only ones that can secure stable and secure future for us all. Thank you once again for this wonderful conference. I thank you all, dear friends. The plenary sitting is about to begin, so you can contact us because our details are open to public. 33 years ago, we had Tiananmen Square.
Leadership in supporting freedom fighters and democracies. That's amazing. And it's not about the size of the country, it's about the belief and the strength of belief of one individual and the country as a whole. So I really believe in your leadership in that. I want to send to my very good friends the support of Georgian people, and I can say that because you have been inspiring for us in your freedom fight. You have been inspiring with your creativity, with your commitment, with your sacrifice that you have done. And we should still indeed stand together, because the goal is the same. We need a free world. We don't need dictatorship. And we will achieve that, I'm sure.
Thank you. Ačiū labai. Kaip tik dar noriu.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we're in different countries geographically. Our struggle is on the different stage, but democracy will win. Let us not forget the Tiananmen, and let us not forget that the fight for freedom is costly, and we should support it.